Hare Krishna, dear Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord. Thank you so much for logging onto this session. We've really enjoyed having you all here, and I'm so grateful to announce Pranada Prabhu's appearance here on our Vaishnavi retreat. I just met her a few days back where we had a brief phone call, and I'm so inspired by this woman. I don't feel like any other person on this planet besides, when Prabhupada was here, cared more about women than she does. It's just absolutely amazing. So I'm so grateful that she's here with us today and that she can speak with us and share her wonderful understanding and to help us overcome all these certain challenges that we face in ISKCON today. So I'll just read you guys a little bit about her bio. So Pranada Prabhu joined the Los Angeles temple at 17 years old, and Srila Prabhupada accepted her as his disciple in 1976. She distributed books for several years and served Back to Godhead magazine in various roles for nearly 30 years. As the KCF president, Pranada spearheaded the building of the ISKCON Ulachua temple. She was the co-director of the BBT Special Projects Division for 5 years and launched Krishna.com with 3 other devotees in 2000. From 1987 to 2000, she worked to re-establish the services Srila Prabhupada gave his daughters, but which were gradually made unavailable to women. For many years, she published the quarterly newsletters Priti Lakshanam to educate devotees about the role of women in ISKCON and provide an avenue for devotees to communicate with the GBC about other topics of concern. With Sudharma Dasi and others, she established the ISKCON Women's Ministry, now known as the Vaishnavi Ministry. More information about the Vaishnavi Ministry and the history, you can go and check her bio out, and there's a link there that says vaishnaviministry.org. To have the facility to offer these volunteer services as an entrepreneur, Pranada established and managed 2 multi-million-dollar businesses to support her family. She is a mother and grandmother and the author of award-winning Wise Love, Bhakti and the Search for the Soul of Consciousness, which will be republished by BBT South Africa this year. Isn't that so exciting? She lives with her husband, Nagaraj Das, in their home in Alatra, and is working on her next book, Bhakti-Shakti, Goddess of Divine Love. So this session is a bit of an interview type of session. So I'll be asking her certain questions, and then we'll open the questions up to the audience, and we'll just keep engaging with each other. So before we get into the topic, how to overcome challenges that women face in ISKCON, perhaps we can just ask Mataji about her book. So can you please tell us a little bit about your book called Wise Love and what inspired you to write it?
Well, I think Wise Love is a good part of this topic because it's about overcoming obstacles. I had for more than 20 years now had a vision of wanting to do outreach for our Western public in a way that would capture their attention, to bring them to Bhakti, because so much of our preaching had come toward Indians and Indian body devotees, and Prabhupada had told us that we should preach to our Western brothers and sisters. So I wanted to do that, and I tried to do that as co-manager of the special projects with the BBT, and for various reasons it didn't quite happen. So the service was blocked. It was a huge obstacle. And I just decided then, I didn't quite decide actually, I was told in my heart that I had to write, and I didn't know how to write. And I just thought, well, that's ridiculous. I have no experience and I'm not going to write, but the indications kept coming. So I spent some years learning how to write, and then a number of years trying to figure out what to write and how to write, and that's described in the book. It's Wise Love is so it is a testament for how we can overcome obstacles. And just like we heard in the slideshow with Vishaka and Malati, that Prabhupada told Kim Waters, just do it. So I think that's an attitude that we could embrace for our benefit and the benefit of the world and the movement. Wise Love is a concise but quite comprehensive handbook on the essence of bhakti that I wrote for our own children, teenagers, for the yoga market, for new devotees, for any number of people being introduced to Krishna consciousness. And I did that in a way talking about consciousness, and that's described. You could show actually now, Priya, the number 1 screen. It's also a book that I'm going to tell about the screen in 1 second. It's also a book that individual preachers can read to have. No, show the screen. We lost it. There you go. That individual preachers can look at for perhaps ideas about how to share Krishna consciousness with a modern Western audience. Now, this page that we're seeing is a free e-course that goes along with Wise Love. You can scroll down just gradually. It's a self-paced study or a 15-week course for a group or individuals, and it was largely written by Tulsarani Dasi, who has a degree in education. We did that so that people could get an experience of bhakti, because the book is, it's dense and it's a lot to go through. That's good. We can end there. So if anybody would like to look at that, one thing about this course I would like to say is that it's a ready-made program for, here we are in COVID and everyone's doing online learning. Here's a great facility to immediately step into a teaching program with people. So that's Wise Love. The BBT South Africa is publishing it this year, so it'll be available in South Africa. And I thought that everyone would like to know about another book. I've just spent some months working on a book called The Bond of Love. This is a book that Malati and Vishaka conceived and worked very hard on. It is for years, this has been like at least 10 years in the making. For years, they interviewed Prabhupada's daughters. I gathered all those interviews. Dina Dayadri, Kaishori, and others typed all those interviews up. Several people edited them. I just went through a final edit, and Maya Priya Dasi is designing and laying out the book, which she says will be ready by Vyas Puja for the world. And that's got over 300 of Prabhupada's daughters' memories, which is actually, I didn't think it was going to be as a powerful book as I experienced. It's really quite a bouquet of love and a testament of Prabhupada's constant love for each of his daughters, where no matter how fast he was traveling, no matter where he was going, he was just always completely present in loving exchange with his daughters. And it's just beautiful. So that will be available this year. And I did want to, Tara, before you start asking me questions, to just express a few things. So the topic is how to overcome challenges women face in ISKCON. And of course, it's not been stipulated what those challenges are, but I heard from the organizers what kind of challenges that they were speaking of, and they are the difficulties women face by being seen as less intelligent, by being perhaps dangerous to men and their spiritual life. We have the sometimes negative scriptural references to women. We have actually overt sexism and misogyny that we find. We have denial of services sometimes. And of course, this is, to varying degrees, and it's in different places in different ways. And some women may experience it and some women may not. Although in my years of speaking with hundreds and hundreds of devotees, both Western-bodied, Indian-bodied, different cultures, different times that they came to the movement, I would say at least 90% of the women have experienced this to some degree or another and been disturbed to some degree or another. So I just want to say that if you haven't experienced it, that's wonderful, but we're going to be speaking about those who have experienced it now. And I also want to say that you're not making it up. It is a genuine issue. And your elder sisters know what you're going through. We have experienced it ourselves, and we know the frustration or the aggravation and sometimes just the absolute heartbreak that's involved with trying to participate in Lord Chaitanya's Prem Sankirtan and be held back from doing that to our fullest capacity. So it is a real, personally, I'll use a strong word, I think it's a tragedy for Gaudiya Vaishnavism to not include the full participation of women in all of their glory and skills and beauty. But it is what it is, and it's actually the nature of the world. We see it everywhere, that women are discriminated against, they're denied things. I mean, this is just, we're in the material world, so we have to face that. But I wanted to say that we have, you actually, Priya, you could put up number 4 now. Your elder sisters have tried to improve the situation, to make it a more amiable place for you to do your services. And there is a history that you could refer to. And I think this will complement for yourselves what you experienced in Vishaka and Malati's slideshow. And that is an awareness that Prabhupada did not prohibit us from doing services. Now you can slow down, Priya. I need to come closer to look at this because I can barely see it. I want to point out a couple of things to the viewers. You can go down. This history, what you'll find here is at least 20 years. I really cannot see this. I'm going to go myself on this site. This is at least 20 years of history of papers that we wrote, of the work that we did to educate and to encourage. These are, there's documents here that you can use to not only read, but share, perhaps with husbands and family and managers in the center that you're at. Okay, so if you scroll down, let's see, Priya, I can't see your screen right now, but if you scroll down to, well, 1994 was the advisory council meeting where the women's ministry was first formed. Then there's a section there, 1996 to 2014 GBC resolutions. You'll find what kinds of resolutions we were able to get passed about women. There's all about the conferences that we did. There's papers by Urmila. I would look at Jyotirmayi's paper, Women in Prabhupada's Time. Then we'd scroll down and let's see, then there's several papers by Vishaka, myself. And then the documents that were referred to, oh my gosh, by God's sister in Australia. What is her name? I forget right now. She was speaking about the papers that were presented in 2000 to the GBC. The women's ministry raised $10,000 to send a delegation of women to the GBC to speak with them about the ongoing problems and our experience. And presentations were made by Yamuna, Vishaka, Sudharma, Rukmini, Sodamini, Kusha, Sitala, and Pranada Urmila wrote papers. All those papers are there. You can look at them and share them. We have a beautiful paper of fundamental human rights in ISKCON by Radha Dasi, who is our president Vaishnavi ministry, has a degree of law from Harvard University. She's a brilliant person who has been completely dedicated to facilitating and helping women in this movement for a very long time. Let's see. Oh, and then we have a beautiful paper by Vishaka about Srila Prabhupada and the use of the address Prabhu, which has now been placed in history as not existing, which simply is not the case. So anyway, you can have a look at those documents, and you can end the screen sharing there. Oh, but you can go to number 5 really quick, Priya. So besides that, we have a Facebook page. The Vaishnavi ministry has a Facebook page, which is moderated by our god sister Sarvani Dasi, who is quite active there. And there's all kinds of beautiful quotes. And just so that you are aware of that, if you're not already, you can go there, and it's a nice place to visit. Okay, so that's that. We can put up actually number 2. So I, after Yamuna Devi passed away, I heard about this quote that she had said. She was in a conversation with Giriraj Swami, and Maharaj gave me this quote. And she said, he asked her if she had accomplished everything that she wanted to accomplish in this life, or if there was anything more that she wanted to do. And at first she said, no, there was nothing more that she wanted to do. She had given everything to Prabhupada, and she was peaceful and ready to go. And then she said, and she had a thought, and then she said this quote here, which I can't read because it's so small, so you'll have to read. But I can. Oh, there we go. If Krishna does give me some more time, I would like to do something for the women, to support the women, to give voice to the women. For me, this is you can end the share screen if you like. This is a very bittersweet quote. Yamuna was not one to go into controversy. She avoided it at all costs. Her heart was so soft. And she was very attentive not to commit offenses. And she just stayed basically away from the topic, although it was one that affected her deeply. So when I heard that quote, I was very moved that here I think Yamuna is like the unsung matriarch of ISKCON that we didn't take advantage of, and how much she could have done if Krishna had allowed us to stay with us. But it wasn't his desire. So here we are, ourselves left to try to give encourage each other and to give each other voice. I do want to read a couple of paragraphs from this paper that our god brother Jagadananda Das wrote on the women's saints in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And that is on the Vaishnavi ministry site. I just put it up on the blog recently if you want to see it. I'm only going to read a couple paragraphs. He is a scholar, and he takes like a detached look at the subject. But by the way, in that paper, he does give a little bio of all, like more prominent and known Vaishnavis in our line. So that's why you might want to look at that paper. But before I read this, I just want to say one thing. When I was so distraught about what I was seeing, how women were being treated, and the pain my god sisters were in and enduring, and even like serious horrors that we won't go into, but like really very serious, not just withholding services kind of thing. But I was so distraught, and I was trying to get up the courage to speak on behalf of the women. At that time, it was a very different situation than ISKCON today. And there was nobody talking about this because it was dangerous to talk about it. You risked being excommunicated from ISKCON. And anyway, what we did go through was enough. But I went to Vrindavan, and I was praying in Vrindavan, and Gauri, our god sister, Gauri Devi Dasi, was in Vrindavan to leave her body. And I went to her distressed because we had distributed books together in Los Angeles. So I knew Gauri as a sincere, serious, very serious Vaishnavi. And I went to her just bearing my soul and just saying, what are we going to do? What can you advise? And she just looked at me and she said, you know, Pranada, I feel so blessed that I'm a woman because I didn't have all of the enticements that the men have for men and power and money and position and rising among the ranks and jostling here and there. And she said, we are so blessed because we have the fortune of really developing the kind of humility that's required to advance in bhakti. And I was first annoyed by her response, but I was so moved by it. And I had to say, yes, this is true. We are fortunate. We should take our fortune, embrace it, and own it, and say, look at Krishna is protecting us from all the ways that we could become sidetracked in our bhakti. There's nothing more important than what we're doing. And we have the facility to be protected in one sense. Now, I'm not saying that that condones abuse in any kind or negativity in any kind, but that's something to consider. Jagadananda writes, actually, before I read this, I just want to say something. I think we should just take a minute to consider where we are in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought Gaudiya Vaishnavism from disrepute, and he expanded on our philosophical basis with a lot of text, and he brought it into modernity. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur institutionalized it with the Gaudiya Math and made available, instead of just ascetics practicing here and there, male ascetics practicing here and there, now they were in moths. They had a mission, and it was a huge preaching mission. They were focused on that. Srila Prabhupada further took the institution fully to the West and introduced women. So we're at a history where this is maybe the first time in an institutional setting like this in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, not maybe, I think, in fact, that women and men are interfacing on a close basis and a process that requires seriousness, celibacy. We know what it requires, and it's a challenge, and it's not easy. So I think we should at least be aware of that and think about what that means and how we're going to participate in bringing Gaudiya Vaishnavism further into the world. And Jagadananda writes in this paper, there are a few traditional societies in which women have played a dominant historical role in this respect. Gaudiya Vaishnavism is no different. The egalitarianism of bhakti movements, which stress the universality of devotion and deny any disqualification based on birth, sex, or caste, seems to have had limited real effects on the actual social circumstance of any of these classes of people. One question that needs analysis is whether the importance of Radha in the Vaishnava pantheon and the general weight given to the female principle and feminine virtues in the Gaudiya Vaishnava culture has had any influence on the status of women. Many feminists and analysts have pointed out that the worship of goddesses has no proven relation to any such amelioration in societies where such worship is conducted. For me, this is heartbreaking, because here we have a theology that places the feminine divine at the apex of reality, at the absolute highest, even higher than Durga, which is the only other tradition that worships a goddess to the extent we are like the super Shakta tradition. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said. And we have this highest ideal of pure love of God, which is to manifest in this world in our relationships. And how is it that we're not manifesting that, so that we have discrimination against gender? It's mind-boggling to me, and it absolutely is something to think about and consider. He writes, a certain disdain of women continues to exist in Orthodox Vaishnava circles today, despite the achievement of a few exceptional women at various points in Gaudiya Vaishnava history. So I have a couple of questions, food for thought for everyone. Will we let this stand as the view others have of Gaudiya Vaishnavism? The matter is really in our hands. Do we want to show the world the nobility of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and its beautiful ideals of universal appeal regardless of race, sex, or caste? It is our greatest honor to represent these sacred teachings to the world. Will we represent them by our behavior, not only our own spiritual practices, but how we allow ourselves to be treated? Finally, I'm going to share this one quote by Bhaktivedanta Thakur in a lecture he gave in West Bengal in the year 1896, Prabhupada's birth year. He ends his lecture. In short, Vaishnavism is the absolute love binding together all men in the infinite, unconditioned, and absolute God. May peace reign forever in the whole universe, in the continued development of its purity by the exertion of the future heroes who will be blessed, according to the promise of the Bhagavat, with powers from the Almighty Father, the Creator, Preserver, and Annihilator of all things in heaven and earth. So, my dear Vaishnavis, it is in your hands. You think that Prabhupada's daughters are pioneers, but actually you are also pioneers. We have not completely established our society. We're only 50 years old. And it's up to you. Please take it seriously. Please don't give up. Grab hold of this with all your heart and might, and do your best to glorify Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. I have a couple of ideas for overcoming obstacles before we take questions, and I'll try to make this quick. I know this is going to sound like dogma, but it's not dogma at all. To overcome obstacles, if we are serious sadhakas, everything will be given. I assure you, if you chant Hare Krishna with all of your attention, sincerity, heart, and begging and pleading to be blessed in service and surrender of your very self, you will become the wise women of tomorrow that you see in your God sisters today. You will nurture and help the next generation. You will experience yourself as a spiritual being that you can barely have a little hint of right now. You will be blessed beyond your wildest dreams. And you will be able to share that experience with others with great power. So dive into your sadhana with all seriousness. It's going to sort through all of the problems. You're going to have a completely different perspective. You are going to be a different person as you progress in your life and you live your life. You're going to look back and you're going to say, gosh, those things that I was worried about and disturbed about, they were so insignificant. They just had no meaning whatsoever in terms of my relationship with Krishna and cultivating it and making it a difference in the world. So I just say, please embrace it fully and dive in. Priya, you could share the slide 3, and we're just going to go over a couple of other things really quick and then take questions. So I just spoke about the sadhana aspect, which is the first one on the list that you're going to see pretty soon. The next one is sisterhood. To overcome obstacles, we need our sisters. We need our God sisters. And what do we do? You're not going to, I mean, my experience is you're going to have a handful of really close, like-minded friends that you're going to share this life with, and find them and cultivate that relationship and nourish it and nurture it in all ways. Like in Alachua here, several women have groups where they meet regularly for confidential association, really honestly share your mind and feelings, apply good instruction, and change yourself. And even if you'll find that even if your friends become distant from you, you'll be able to connect with them in very deep ways very quickly. And finally, and I can't say this enough, please, please, please advocate for your sisters. Don't be silent. Speak for them. If you see them having difficulty, if you see them being abused, if you see them being disrespected, denied service, help them, speak to them, speak to others about what they're going through and how to support them. End the silence. I think our mistake, this is my personal opinion, others may agree or not agree. I think our mistake as the first generation was that we became silent, and that silence caused devastation. It caused devastation for our children. It caused devastation for our sisters. It caused devastation in our own lives. And of course, as I said in the beginning, various devotees have different levels of experience of this. But in speaking with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women, I would say that I'm not overly exaggerating how difficult it has been because of the silence. So pleasantly, humbly speak up about each instance of discrimination, denigration, disrespect, or abuse. Seek help from the Vaishnavi ministry, whatever you can. And then next, knowledge. I think everyone has felt empowered seeing that slideshow Vishaka and Malati shared. You have more knowledge with the papers on the Vaishnavi ministry now. You know, it's a common knowledge in politics that to control people, you control the airways, you control what information they have access to, so that you can feed them what you want them to know. So let's break it open. Let's make it accessible to women around the world, because I repeatedly hear the different kinds of suffering they're going on, and the same mistakes that were done in the 70s and 80s in the US and other places. I hear them going on in other places on the world, and it's so hard to hear and witness and think about. So let's get it out there. Humility. Give up the enjoying spirit, not your sense of self. You know, there's this idea that we're supposed to be submissive, and I think that's a beautiful quality, and we should be submissive, and absolutely we have to develop it. But we're not submissive to every single person, and we're not submissive to abuse. That's not Vaishnava behavior. I'm not going to go into the details of that now, but I just want to suggest that submission is to one's husband, to one's direct authority, and it's not at the expense of denigration. And then flow like a river. I just heard this recently from Rukmini. She did a podcast on the weekend, and someone asked her about, how have you encountered what have you done when you encountered problems? And she suggested, what's the advice for women? And she said, flow like water, go around it, ignore it, move on. And finally, act on the guidance of your heart in consultation with advanced Vaishnavis. Okay, so we can end that share screen. And what do you think, Tara? Should we take questions?
Yeah, should I start with a few that I have myself?
Yes, whatever. Yeah, we have an hour, so yes.
Okay, great. So one serious concern is the lack of women in senior management positions within ISKCON. If they desired so, how can women empower themselves to enter these positions? And how can they work with men without breaking etiquette or putting themselves in a vulnerable psychological state?
Well, empowering yourself means you have a certain skill set and ability, and it will be evident in your service and work, and Krishna will engage you in that. Be prepared for headaches. I mean, this is a male-dominated society. It is a close-knit group of people that run the organization, and it's not exactly a welcoming place. Now, we have Malati on the GBC. We had Dina Sharon at one point. We had women's ministries. We have women voting at one point. Women weren't leading kirtan. They weren't speaking Bhagavatam class. They weren't in any position of management whatsoever. We've made some progress. It's too little. It's taken a long time. More needs to be made. But, look at your own motives, check them carefully. We don't need to be men. But I do know many women who are very competent managers, better managers than men, and they should be in positions anytime they can. But be aware. And as far as, what was the other part? Psychological. The etiquette. The etiquette, I would just say, the etiquette is Vaishnava etiquette. It's respect. It's being sober. It's not going out to attract men. I don't think that's the intention anyway, but that we have to state that. And the psychological, that's a problem. Men mixing with women can create attraction, and it's both for the man and the woman. So that's why we have the problem we have in our movement, is because this is a reality of life. So, and men don't want to deal with it, or they're incapable of dealing with it, or whatever the reasons are. It's part of the dynamic. But all you could do is your own work and your own control. So first of all, just don't entertain any flirtatious eye movements, comments, nothing. Very quickly, if a man doesn't see you responding to it, they'll just go on. They won't deal with it. So just remain sober, sincere, and clear about what you're doing, that you're doing a service. It's a serious one. You're representing other women in the movement by your behavior and by your service, and be cautious.
Thank you so much for that.
Is that okay, or
yes, that's a very wonderful answer. I really appreciate that.
The other thing is that, so there aren't necessarily established places for women to move into in ISKCON, right? It's not like you can just manage here, because you're not going to be necessarily welcome. You'll have to prove yourself, all these things. But you know what? You can do all kinds of preaching on your own. And that's a lot of management. And I think you're an example of that, Tara. So we need to hear more. We need to see more like you, just take on the project, just do it well with all your skills, and preach for Lord Chaitanya. If there's not facility for you in one place, then make it.
Thank you. I think that was actually my next question. I wanted to know if people felt empowered to give classes and workshops, etc., how should they do that? But yeah, as you said, they should just create the facility for themselves.
ISKCON does need to, the institution does need to make room for women to learn to speak, to be given a facility to learn to speak and give classes. Speaking and teaching is an essential characteristic of Smaranam and growing our realization. And it is a direct anga of bhakti that we need the facility to engage in for our development. So that we should seek it in the temples where the classes are going on. And if we don't have it, then let's go online. Look at this. Look at what Sharadiya Rasa and you guys have done. This is phenomenal. Let's do it. I was thinking about this, because it takes some time to learn how to give a class. And it's kind of embarrassing if you're up there and you're expected to give this great class before you've had experience. So let's create a group where we give each other classes and we learn how to speak and develop that skill. And Kosharupa, our God sister, has a very nice seminar about teaching how to give classes.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. Perhaps we can try establish one of those initiatives after the retreat. It would be really great to do that. So there's an overarching expectation for women to have no varma. They're simply expected to marry, be a submissive wife, and raise the kids. Do you agree with these expectations?
Well, I think that it's depending on the woman. I mean, I know women who love being wives and mothers, and they're really good at it, and they do beautiful service, and it's absolutely essential for the proper functioning of society. And we have beautiful children becoming devotees by these services of the women. I'm thinking right now of Krishna Nandini, our god sister, who's very ill, and she raised many children, more than 10. I can't even remember, and she did such a gorgeous job of it. She was just extraordinary. So it's service, and it's an important service. And I know women who aren't going to just be filling that role. They're not even, maybe they are filling that role for a period of their life, but before childbearing or marriage, and after raising their children, they're going to want service, and they have skills and qualities that need to be engaged. So I think that kind of covers your question, that it's practical. It depends on the individual. Sudharma, my god sister, my dear god sister, she has always said right from the beginning of our work that to prohibit a Vaishnavi from doing service because of a bodily consideration having nothing to do with her expertise and abilities is the greatest violence.
Wow, thank you so much for that profound statement. I don't know if others have experienced it, but I've definitely been denied certain services because I'm a woman, so it's just so empowering to hear this from you. There's actually another dogma linked to this topic, and it's one of women being psychologically unstable or viewed as if something is wrong with them if they're not in a relationship. Some women I've noticed have started internalizing these impositions, that they just feel unworthy because they don't have a partner in their life, and they go crazy because they're like, no, society's telling me I need a partner. So do you have any advice for us on how to deal with this and how to set ourselves up for future stability if one would choose to remain a brahmacharini?
Again, in general, as a generalization, we want partners and we want life partners. So I would think that most women, as we see, are going to get married. As an option, you could have a sister as a companion for your life to share the journey with, like Dina and Yamuna. They were just their sisterhood was so deep, and that's also just like Dina talks about what Prabhupada said. If two people are like-minded and get together, that's more powerful than 200 people arguing. So we need partnership, we need companionship, we need community, and most women are going to get married. But that doesn't mean that a woman who doesn't want to get married must get married, or should be forced to get married, or should be looked to and asked to marry one of the men because one of the men want to get married, which was a common occurrence. I don't know if it still happens, but it was very common that if a man wanted to get married and there was a single woman, you would just go tell the woman you need to marry him, which is, it needs to work for the woman as well. And it's up to the woman when she's ready to get married. I mean, I don't think that, getting married is a serious commitment and a responsibility, and we should get married when we're ready to, when we're more whole as people and can actually give and participate in a relationship. I know Archana City, in dealing with a lot of, marriage counseling, has told me things like, you need to really be prepared as an individual to be married. So it's not a small matter, and it shouldn't be taken lightly, and it should be done when the woman's ready. And if she doesn't want to, then she shouldn't be forced. Now, the next part of your question is that's an obstacle, because I honestly don't see ISKCON taking care of single women in their old age or during critical care. They don't have the finances for it. There's no setup for it. We've been aware of this for decades. So how do you structure that? I think there will be some women that can structure it, that they will be taken care of by the institution, but it's probably not going to be a lot of people. And so if you're going down that path, there's going to be some serious considerations that need to be made about how you're going to support yourself when you're no longer able to be fully active and a participating member on a daily basis in a temple that requires the manpower to keep that temple going, and currently does not have financial planning set up to care for its monastic members. Now, how you do that, I don't know how you do that. I mean, I just I don't know how you do. I mean, you have to. Okay, you do this in two ways. One, your level of Krishna consciousness, your level of faith that Krishna is going to give you care is so solid that you're able to just completely go into that position and know that even if it's a very austere situation, you can handle that, and you've got that level of faith. That is a very tenable, real possibility. There are ascetics and sadhvis, but that's going to be rare.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. It really gives us some food for thought on, how far this movement still needs to go. And then, the only ultimate way is just really just develop our faith in Krishna, and that he's going to help us, through all these challenges, and helping to create the ISKCON that, Prabhupada really foresaw.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really wonderful. So now we've spoken a little bit about the brahmacharinis, and I feel like there's also an obstacle in grihastha life. And I feel like, you were speaking about women being forced into marriages. And so one of the concerns is that, regarding psychological abuse in relationships. So this is like a very subtle form of abuse, and often it's very hard to prove. So, some men may make women feel that they're unworthy, or emphasize, bodily appearance in a movement that, we're convinced that we're souls. So sometimes it's very difficult for women to deal with this. And also they're kind of just expected to Pranada, just to tolerate their partners and any offenses or, abuses that may occur. So what advice would you give for women in like a similar position? Should she just tolerate this abuse and stay in such a relationship?
Yeah, so Tara, some people may not really understand the what is emotional abuse and the far-ranging effects of it. But in my opinion, psychological abuse can be even worse than physical abuse, because you don't see the scars. They're hidden, and to kind of get the support that you need is more difficult, because as you say, it's subtle, it's hidden, it's hard to pinpoint, even sometimes, like the crazy making that possibly could go on. When you encounter that, I don't know, you shouldn't just accept it. One thing that we should understand, as we want to care for others, it's our responsibility to care for ourselves as well. We are also attempting to be and become a Vaishnavi. It's our responsibility to protect that Vaishnavi. She needs as much care and attention as we give to someone else. So no, we're not going to just take it. If you're now, as far as the details of a relationship, well, hopefully that can be worked out. Maybe you need counseling. Maybe you need marriage counseling. If it's during the time of a betrothal and you're not married yet, well, maybe you need to think that this is not going to work out. You should take the signs seriously and get out. So whether it's physical abuse or emotional abuse, we just don't sit and take it. That's not humility. That's not, you could call it humility and you can call it submission, but I don't think it's healthy. I'm not a psychologist, but I don't think it's healthy. And I did spend, when I was speaking for women, I had many women coming to my door, battered women, crying, black eyes, broken limbs, like serious abuse cases. And I tried to educate them that this is not acceptable. They don't have to take it. They need to get professional care. If it's really bad, it should be reported to authorities. We, as a movement, we don't have the systems to deal with child abuse and domestic violence, but there are resources in most countries, or a lot of Western countries. Then we turn to that. Did that answer the question, Tara?
Yes, thank you. It did. And maybe just to further it, some women we don't actually see when we have been psychologically abused. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I felt this way before, and I spoke to a senior a senior Grihasta couple about my situation, and they highlighted to me that I was being psychologically abused, and only after many sessions with them did I actually accept, okay, this is what was happening. And then when I accepted it, still there were other people in the community, specifically Prabhus, who said, no, you weren't psychologically abused. You're just trying to go with this contemporary movement of, women above men and feminism, etc. And I was kind of shut down. So do you have perhaps any advice for us? And firstly, how we can notice we've been psychologically abused, and then, what we can do about it, specifically in our society that has a male-dominated management system?
Well, our private life isn't for everyone's consumption, even if we're living in an ashram. What to speak of when we're living outside of an ashram. And it sounds like you did a fantastic thing. You went to a Grihasta couple who probably had some experience in relationships and were able to tell you, help you. You probably didn't feel like yourself. You were probably dealing with new emotions of distress and depression and all kinds of things. Like I said, I'm not a psychologist, but you probably could Google pretty quickly emotional abuse and the effects that will show up in someone's psyche. And if you're identifying it, it's like, wow, okay, this is what's happening with me, and now how to deal with it. So everyone can have their opinion, but you have to follow your inner guidance and those senior devotees that you're seeking help from. So it sounds in your situation that Krishna guided you and protected you and gave you a good life experience, and now you can be there for someone else.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is what I should learn from this, is that I can help other women or any living being in the same position as myself, and I'll be able to show some sympathy and compassion. So thank you so much for answering that question. So I'm going to open our questions out to the audience. We've already received some. So the first question was, I think it's related to when we were discussing your book. You kind of just felt like you had to write it. You felt it from your heart. So she kind of just wants to know what exactly that means.
What it means that I wanted to write from what it means that I had that experience. Well, it's something that's subtle when you get an indication from the heart, the super soul in the heart. And if you're paying attention, you'll hear it. And if you're wanting to make advancement, you'll listen to it. So you have to be paying attention, and then you have to act on that guidance. It was not an easy obstacle to deal with. I had spent 5 years working with the BBT to try to get out these introductory books, and for various reasons, no fault of any particular person or organization, it didn't happen. But it was, I don't know why, but it was a vision that was implanted in my heart decades ago that I have a responsibility to Prabhupada to preach to my Western brothers and sisters. And I saw a need, and I felt that need really needed to be filled. And I didn't have the facility to do it elsewhere. So I just said, I guess I'm going to have to do it. And that meant literally from the beginning, learning how to write, going to a writers group every Tuesday, and a non-devotees writers group, finding a mentor, going every week, practicing writing, banging my head against the wall, trying to figure out how to present Krishna consciousness without all the ISKCONism lingo, and for a little bit more intelligent audience, and just try to break open bhakti to be more like without dogma. And it was, I can't tell you what an immense challenge and how lonely it has been. But then at one point, Krishna just said, "Oh, you poor thing." And he let something come out. Sometimes that's what it takes.
You remind me of the Damodar Lila, where, we just do our endeavor and then eventually Krishna has to give the mercy.
He doesn't have to, but he often does.
It's really beautiful. So there's one Mataji who asks about divorced women and the feelings of failure associated with it that comes from, stigma, or just personally feeling like a failure or societal failure.
Yeah. I mean, it is it's a situation that is, it's sad, and it is, it's unfortunate for society that we have divorce and broken marriages. It's sad. You were in love with someone deeply at one time, and all of a sudden you could be in a situation where you can't even be in the same room with that person. There's all kinds of emotions. I think maybe what she's getting to is perhaps saying that, sometimes we've heard that it's all the woman's fault if a marriage fails. I think the statistics prove otherwise. There are a lot of women are abused, are battered women, and it's no fault of their own. So it's individual. I don't know. Did she make a mistake? Probably. We all make mistakes. Maybe she made a little error of judgment here or there, or how she spoke with him, or how she did something. But at the same time, she might not have done anything wrong. Or so what's the lesson? We have these unfortunate situations in life. How do we use them to our benefit? How do we grow from them? How do we improve? How do we make sure they don't happen again? So it's Krishna consciousness is a very internal, self-reflective journey that requires our sincerity, attention, and willingness to reflect and change. So she'll have to answer these kinds of, she'll have to think about it herself, how she could have done better. And maybe there wasn't any possibility of doing. Maybe she just did the absolute best she could. And sometimes, we're fallible and we're small, and maybe our best isn't good enough for somebody.
Yeah, that can be quite disheartening, but at least we can think that our best is good enough for Krishna.
Our best is good enough because it's the best we can do, and we can go on trying to improve.
Thank you for that. So here's another question based on mistreatment, and she wants to know, how do we reconcile what Krishna allows versus real mistreatment? in the example of Yamuna Devi, how can we accept that she was not able to offer more to our movement?
I think that if we take the position that whatever happens to us is an arrangement for our advancement, whether it's, I mean, there can be very unfortunate situations, but how you respond to that misfortune is what is at issue. And whether you can say it's Krishna, what was it, if it was Krishna or what?
Or if it was real mistreatment, like Krishna's arrangement.
Yeah, okay, Krishna's arrangement or mistreatment. Well, mistreatment is mistreatment. Now one thing is that we can ourselves take it humbly, but if we see it done to somebody else, we shouldn't take it humbly. We should not stand by and tolerate that. We must protect our sisters. We must stand up for them. How we deal with it is different. And Yamuna is a good example of that. She was like water, and she found another way to serve Prabhupada to her fullest ability. It didn't look the way perhaps this person is referring. And maybe I even made indications that she could have, if she had been given a position as the real matriarch of our society, things could have been different. Yamuna took every situation and used it to the most for her advancement in Krishna consciousness. And I don't think we have to call it Krishna's arrangement. Like I said, I think the individual might see it as Krishna's arrangement. I don't think we need to see it as Krishna's arrangement. I think we can be sad about mistreatment. Krishna's not really, Krishna's not orchestrating all the bad things in the world. We are doing that ourselves. It's we're bringing that on ourselves by our previous behavior, and karma is coming to us. And I'm not saying that that's the case in Jamuna's. We're talking about Yamuna. I'm not mixing the two. So yeah, I think there is real mistreatment. It's not just all Krishna's arrangement, and therefore everything going on in an institution or in a marriage is just all Krishna's arrangement. No, we have to use our discrimination and intelligence and work to change mistreatment. There's no such thing as, just like sitting down and just like taking all this kind of negative situations that aren't conducive for spreading bhakti.
Do you think perhaps it's Krishna's arrangement that he wants us to help change this, mistreatment of women, instead of viewing it as, we're getting this mistreatment because we deserve, but rather because Krishna wants us to get through it and empower other people through it?
Well, I don't really know what Krishna's doing, but that's a very nice take on it. I think that it would be, I made some kind of like indication that that's been given to us as an opportunity for service, should any of us want to take it on. And it's an important service, and it's a good service. It's a needed service. It's serving the Vaishnavis. We're told that service of the Vaishnavas is as good or better than serving Krishna directly. So yeah, we should serve the Vaishnavis.
Okay, thank you for that. Someone is asking on how we can properly educate men on these issues.
Carefully, gradually, humbly, thoughtfully, with the resources that you've received in this seminar this weekend. share the slideshow that Malati and Vishaka put together. If a paper that's on the Vaishnavi ministry touches you and you feel like could convey an important message to someone that you would like to share with, you do that. I know that when I first met my husband, he had been a brahmachari for 12 years, and he was very much a brahmachari. And he had no clue what women had been through, nor did he have any particular interest in it. And it took, gradual conversations. And I had to know the philosophy. He's a very studious, scholarly person, and I couldn't have conversations without referring to Shastra, without backing it with Prabhupada's example. And so, to teach someone, you need to learn yourself. So educate yourself, study Prabhupada's books, look at how he applied what was in the books to his life, how he related to women, and start sharing that with the person that you would like to have understand more about what you're experiencing and what you feel needs to be changed.
Thank you. So we have this question here. It's we've covered some of it, but it relates a bit more to culture. So some women do not understand when they are being mistreated due to culture. So how can we help them?
Due to culture, like somebody's idea of how women should be treated, and that's a cultural consideration, and therefore they're mistreating them because of that cultural. Well, I wonder what kind of culture that is. Do I have it here? I have on the Grahasta Vision Team website, they have a nice paper up. I don't have it here. They have a nice paper up by a godbrother named Sri Nandanandana, and he speaks about advanced culture honors women and the feminine because it is so crucial for the smooth functioning of society and the development of life. And it's a beautiful piece. I can't remember more details than that, but it is on the what is it, familyresources.org or something like that we got the other day. So I think the question is a little too vague, but I don't see how it's culturally all right to beat women, to denigrate them, to make them psychologically distressed, to force them into situations that they're not voluntarily entering into. I don't see how that's culture, so I don't know how the two things go together, culture and abuse. I wouldn't call that culture.
Perhaps the Mataji's understanding of culture is just a bit off.
Is a bit what?
Is not 100% accurate.
Or clear. I think the question may be just not clear.
Okay.
Or she's probably trying to get at something, but hasn't got it quite in the question. And if she wants to add that up, she could, if she could try to give us some clarity.
Okay, cool. I'll see if she sends us some clarity. So someone here asks, what are the priorities we should put before choosing a partner so that our spiritual life is not affected?
Well, obviously you would want to marry a Vaishnava, or one who is so favorable to your practices that they won't interfere with them. The other considerations would be someone who's like-minded to you, someone you can relate to, someone who can be a friend, someone who you could see raising children with, living with, caring for in their old age, someone you can communicate with, someone you can really have a close relationship with.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that really shines some light on, who we should look out to be or which partner we want to be with. It's really nice. So this one lady asks, or she first states that sometimes women are not given the respect, shelter, protection that they so deserve, and instead of their needs and interests, I think there's some spelling errors. Instead of their needs, interests, and concerns being addressed, they are instead abused within our movement. Sometimes these women see the only route is to leave ISKCON.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe this too is by the arrangement of Krishna, or are they fallen ultimately due to aparad?
It's not the arrangement of Krishna, and only the person would know if aparad was involved with their being taken away from Krishna consciousness. I know a lot of my god sisters left the movement because of what they experienced. You could say because, or you could say, well, they had this problem and that problem, and it's, they have to take responsibility for their choices and their actions. But it was, their decisions were very much tied to how they were treated as a woman in ISKCON. And that's what's so heartbreaking, how can it be that we can allow that to happen? How can it be that we are not set up as an institution that would make everyone feel connected and welcomed and appreciated and valued? That it is so rare for a soul to come to the shelter of a Sadguru and Lord Chaitanya's movement, and to lose, Prabhupada had cried tears, to lose one person was very hard. It's very sad, and what to speak of just because they have a body that we have an opinion about. What was the question again? Say it again to me.
If people fall away from ISKCON, is it due to aparad?
Oh, I see. I mean, we have this idea that if your bhakti is blocked, oftentimes it's due to an aparad. But leaving ISKCON doesn't mean your bhakti is blocked either. There's, just quite frankly, there's different sanghas. There's practicing on your own and coming to the ISKCON temple, being a congregational member. Your bhakti can continue. So, and it just may be that they can't live in a temple because the situation is so uncomfortable on this issue for them, and that's valid. I mean, I opened up saying this is real. We're not making it up. This is a real experience. It's part of the material world. It's been here forever. Unfortunately, we haven't transcended it in our institution. It would be wonderful if it could be transcended, and maybe your generation can help do that. But we have to situate ourselves in a way where we can engage in our bhakti peacefully.
Sorry, you started mentioning, the focus on the material body, and sometimes the focusing on it is viewed as being negative within Krishna consciousness. So how can we teach, younger women or ourselves understand to see like menses and other female things as positive?
Well, it's positive in the sense that it's natural. I don't know about you, but it certainly isn't fun. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it positive. I think I know where she's going with it, because this is a theme in feminism and goddess worship where the body is sacred. So viewing any part of it as anything but sacred is not honoring of the body. So in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we have a similar understanding. The body is sacred. When it's used in Krishna's service, it actually becomes what sometimes is termed as a sadhaka deha, a body of a sadhaka, of a practicing devotee. And that's starting to shift from a strictly material body to a spiritual body. And when we do use our senses in Krishna's service, we are spiritualizing the vehicle, and that vehicle is becoming more and more sacred. And of course, it's the vehicle we need to engage in the angas of bhakti, using our senses, chanting, engaging in active service, using the mind. This is how we're making progress toward Krishna's lotus feet. So it's a immensely sacred vehicle. But to then say, because I think it's kind of like this pendulum swinging, like, let's get some balance here, because you're denigrating women, and actually this is a sacred, beautiful part of women's body, to give birth and bring in life into this world and care for it, and all those things are true. It's just we don't have the same kind of a focus that feminists often do. I think they take it just like a couple steps too far, without a clear understanding of what's the difference between material and spiritual. It's just because it's a woman's body, it's sacred. Well, bodies are sacred in the sense that they're a gift from God, and they're meant to be used in God's service. And the more that you engage in service, you're spiritualizing the body and making it sacred. I hope that helps.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I can't hear you, Tara.
Start miming. So here's a question. It says that after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, it's very male orientated. I think they're just referring to ISKCON. How come you senior disciples did not stand up for your god sisters' mistreatments? But I'd like to just maybe a bit rephrase this question. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the events that led up to this point in ISKCON, from where Prabhupada left to now, and why we're in this situation.
Well, it is a long history, and but just to be clear, it's not that we didn't do anything. We started speaking out in I started speaking to devotees very privately, carefully choosing who I was going to speak to, if it was safe to speak to that person, around 1984, about 10 years after I became a devotee. Before that, I was blissfully unaware. I mean, I wasn't unaware. It was starting to accumulate, watching what was going on and thinking, well, wait a minute, this isn't right. This isn't what I've learned in the Bhagavatam and the Gita, and this isn't what I've seen and heard from Prabhupada about Prabhupada's behavior with his daughters. And it was like a slow awakening to the situation, and then it kind of like got to a critical mass of awareness, and then we started talking and we started actively working. I mean, Sudharma and I initially talked in, I think it was 1989 or 1990. She was going to head up the PR campaign for ISKCON on the Robin George case. And it was going to be really like the first time a woman was going to be interfacing with all the temple presidents and GBCs on an important matter. So it was like a very high, it wasn't a position like in as a temple president, but it was a very high, she was moving in the circles of the male management. And she did an incredible job, actually, by the way. She gained a lot of respect because of her soberness, her intelligence, her expertise, her dedication. anyway, so when we did start her and I had a conversation, and then we really started working how we're going to educate and get this information out there, because we had seen, like, I saw Radharani give Bhagavatam class when Prabhupada was on the planet. I was like, I came later in the movement just before Prabhupada left, and I was very, very young. And I remember Radharani was giving Bhagavatam class, and the men didn't like it. In fact, I don't know who it was, but they flew to Hawaii, where Prabhupada was, and said, can we stop Radharani giving the Bhagavatam class? We don't like it. He said, no, why? Let her give the Bhagavatam class. And they came back and they stopped her from giving the Bhagavatam class. It was just like, this was what was happening until, these things shut down. And it was between 72, 73, 74. And I think overall, we were trying to give everything to Prabhupada, give our very self. And it was absorbing, engaging. It was around the clock. We didn't have a lot of time to think about things, really, and contemplate what was, we were having different experiences, but we didn't have time to get into these things, really. So it took some time for some of us to be brave enough to speak up. And once we got that, we became used as instruments in Krishna's service in that way, to try to serve the Vaishnavis. We really worked hard for 20 years. Sudharma gave her life for women for 20 years. She gave her life. I gave a lot of money. I gave a lot of time. Her and I were always thinking and strategizing and planning. She was planning conferences. We were getting people to write papers. People were starting to come forward and write papers. We were starting to try to get a woman on the GBC body. And then that next thing was, if they were on the body, could they get a vote? This was every single step of the way, took an incredible amount of energy and education and discussion and patience, and on it went. So it's not that we didn't do anything, but initially it took a while to catch on, and there was a lot of silence, and a lot of women just they didn't have the ability, interest, or they didn't want to get involved in the politics of it. It was heavy politics, and it is what it is. I don't know, but I would say that the silence was not helpful for anybody, not the men, not the women, not the children. And in looking back, as is with history and hindsight, as you could see all the mistakes that were made. And that's the thing, is that, so we made the mistakes. We just don't want to continue making them and duplicating them in other countries, and allowing this view of women to foster and go on. And that's why the more we end the silence, the more we educate ourselves, the more we take the time to express what we're learned or what we know to others, then the better for going forward.
Thank you so much for that. I have a question. Oftentimes I see amongst women, we can be very envious, and now we're speaking of a sisterhood. And so I'd just like to know, how can we get rid of these feelings of envy towards other women?
It's not only a woman's proclivity. It's an illness of a conditioned soul to be envious of others, to want more for oneself, to want to elevate oneself. There's different psychological reasons for it. There's deep samskars in the chitta that create it, and it's difficult to overcome. It's a matter of spiritual practice. You're not going to, it's one thing to change habits and change behaviors, and up to a certain point with psychological tools, you can do that. But to really uproot this requires a very serious spiritual sadhana. But in the meantime, we can remind each other that it's not helpful for oneself or the other person, and you're really harming yourself more than even anyone else. So even pointing it out to a sister that, this is kind of like unbecoming behavior or approach, and it's not going to be helpful for you. I mean, we have to be really careful of Vaishnava aparad. It is the only thing that can harm our bhakti creeper is aparad. It is extremely dangerous in our practice. And we need to become vigilant about not committing aparad to anyone, any living entity, what to speak of someone who is attempting to practice Krishna consciousness, to give their life to Krishna. So that's a matter of hearing, sharing. Just keep trying. And when you see it in yourself, stop it. Really work on, maybe we can, that would be a good seminar for us Vaishnavis to have, how to, one focused like the one that Archana did on humility. We can have one on becoming non-envious.
Yeah, that would be really nice. We could probably have a whole series on that. But thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you for being.
Yeah, I wanted to just quickly say thank you to all of you organizers, Sharadiya Ras, who initially contacted me. I want to share with you something. My heart leapt when Sharadiya Ras contacted me. I've had an idea for 5 years to do an online global summit for Vaishnavis to bring us together, and I just couldn't find the help. It just didn't materialize. But Priya, if you put on the screen number 6, a few years ago, we came close to launching one, and Lalita Priya, who worked with Vishaka on Prabhupada film, came up with the logo. I had come up with a name called The Power of Bhakti to highlight the power of Bhakti to transcend material designations. And I bought that URL, by the way. We own thepowerofbhakti.com. I think I got the Facebook page as well. And now you could show 8, and then after 8, I'll say 9, Priya. And so the concept was to, Priya, you can show 8. The concept was to, I had kept hearing, that was the one that just went away, Priya. I kept hearing that women wanted the association of Prabhupada's daughters, and from all over the world, they were like, really, I kept hearing this, they were really hankering for it. And but the circumstances are that women don't necessarily have the money. They're the ones taking care of the family. They can't travel so easily. And so I just heard this like deep angst that women needed this Vaishnavi Sangha, this Vaishnavi association. I thought, what better way than doing it online, where we could actually develop a library? If we had this once a year or twice a year, we develop a library of all these sessions that can be accessed by women around the world any time of the day or night. So to document Prabhupada's daughters' experiences, learn from the mistakes that we made, learn how Prabhupada treated them, receive their wisdom. I don't know about you, but I am just like so moved by what I heard this weekend. We need this. There's so many women who are such serious Vaishnavis that have so much to give and share. So you could show 9, Priya, just really quickly. So the first one that we had thought was to do one that focused exclusively on hearing from Prabhupada's daughters, so that we could record the history before it's gone. So many of our god sisters are passing now. The generation is leaving us. In fact, by Malati and Vishaka's foresight to do the Bond of Love book, I can't tell you, there's quite a few women in that book who have now passed away. That means we just got their memories before we lost them. And there's others who aren't in there who have passed away. So this was the idea. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to each one of you. And Shardia Ross, I heard, was kind of like spearheading this in a big way. I am so grateful. You've made me so happy. And I just think, I hope we can continue. And I hope that people Vaishnavis who really want this Sangha, who want to see change, will make a commitment in their time and come forward to help so that we could actually bring this into a regular reality to nurture us and create community. Thank you so, so, so much.
And we thank you so much, for staying in Prabhupada's movement and being there now for all of us. I mean, I can just imagine if I was this old and not having any senior Matajis at all, I think my heart would have been broken. So just thank you for yourself and for all your God sisters and for coming here to speak to us today. I really appreciate it.
And we can just say that, Narasringa Bhagavan is known as Bhakti Vigna Vinasa. He removes all obstacles on the path of devotion. So we can petition Nrsingadev to guide us, to give us intelligence, to give us intuition, to give us enthusiasm, to give us knowledge, and improve ourselves and this beautiful movement that Prabhupada gave us. Jai Vaishnavi Thakurani's ki jai!
Jai!